Everyone wants to be happy, but how do you stay that way when life doesn't go as planned? Some people can only smile when everything is perfect, but others know how to stay peaceful even in the middle of the storm. This is the story of an old woman and her secret to happiness in every situation. Once upon a time, in a quiet little village surrounded by green fields, there lived an old woman everyone called the Happy Lady. She lived in a small wooden house with a tiny flower garden that bloomed all year round. Rain or shine, she was always smiling, a gentle, honest smile that warmed everyone around her. Villagers often came to visit her, some for advice, others just to feel a little peace in her presence. One afternoon, a young man came to see her. He had always wondered why she seemed so joyful, no matter what happened. "Ma'am," he asked, "how can you always be so happy? Don't you ever feel sad or angry?" The old woman smiled softly, her eyes glowing with quiet wisdom. "My dear," she said, "life has its good days and bad days, but I've learned something very important. Happiness doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we see it and how we choose to live through it." The young man frowned slightly, still confused. "You say happiness comes from inside, but what about when terrible things happen? When you lose someone you love? How can anyone be happy then?" The old woman looked out the window where the golden sunlight was resting on the fields and began to speak in a calm, steady voice. "When I was young," she said, "I had a small family, my husband and our children. We didn't have much, but we were happy. We laughed, worked hard, and shared simple meals together. I thought that happiness would last forever. But one day, my husband became very ill. We couldn't afford the medicine he needed, and soon he was gone. It was the darkest day of my life. I cried for weeks, believing that joy had left me forever." Her voice softened, carrying both sorrow and serenity, the kind that only comes when someone has made peace with pain. "Time passed," she continued, "and I realized that no amount of tears could bring my husband back, but my children still needed me. And if I kept drowning in grief, I would lose not only the past, but also the present. So I started to look at life differently. I understood that happiness doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means learning to smile through the pain. Life will always have light and shadow, joy and sorrow, but we get to decide which one we focus on." The young man leaned closer, listening intently. "But how do you do that?" he asked. The woman smiled, her voice gentle and warm. "Every morning," she said, "I tell myself, today is a new day, and I will find one small reason to be happy. Sometimes it's the sunlight through my window, sometimes a flower blooming or a friend dropping by. There's always something to be thankful for, if you take the time to see it." The young man thought for a long moment before asking again, "But what if something truly awful happens? What if you lose everything? How can anyone still be happy then?" The old woman looked at him with eyes full of kindness. "It's not easy," she said softly, "but I remind myself, everything passes. Even the worst storms eventually end. When bad things happen, I tell myself, this too shall pass. Then I look around and focus on what's still good. My health, my friends, the simple fact that I'm still alive. Happiness is a choice, my dear. You can choose to dwell on the bad and feel miserable, or you can choose to find the good and be grateful. It won't always be easy, but every time you choose gratitude over despair, you grow stronger. You learn to be happy in any situation." The young man bowed his head, deeply moved. When he left her house, it felt as if a small light had been lit inside his heart. From that day on, the young man began to live by her words. Every morning he looked for something to be thankful for: a warm cup of tea, a friendly smile, the sound of birds outside his window. His problems didn't disappear, but his heart slowly changed. He learned to see life through a softer lens, one that allowed joy to shine through even on the hardest days. Soon, the old woman's story spread across the village. People began to understand that happiness isn't about wealth or luck. It's about perspective. It's about choosing to see the light, even when the sky is grey. And over time, the little village became a happier place, filled with gratitude, laughter, and peace. Happiness isn't something you find. It's something you choose. No matter how difficult life becomes, there's always something beautiful to hold on to, if you choose to see it.